This is the Case Whisperer, and today we'll be going through an actual MBB mock case taken directly from Bain's mock case website. And the focus of this video is on case math. For context, I am a former McKinsey consultant and Wharton MBA graduate who has coached dozens of candidates on MBB-style case interviews. Today's mock case is on Fashion Co., which you can find on Bain's website in their mock case section. Now, the purpose of this video is to discuss case math. So we're going to skip past the first part on the qualitative components, but let's just go briefly through the summary here and just indicate that Fashion Co. is a player in women's fashion, and the main problem is they've experienced declining revenues over each of the past 5 years. Now, you'll still want to know this even for the case math, because while the right answer is giving a numerical answer most of the time, you still want to tie back that numerical answer to the overall problem asked by the case originally. And when you do the full case interview, you're going to get these qualitative and quantitative sub-answers throughout the case as you gather more information. And these are all little clues that will be used at the end of the case to provide your overall synthesized recommendation. So just keep, again, this overall question about declining revenues in mind as we go about the case math. All right, so we'll scroll past the qualitative section and then get down here to the quantitative question of the case. So basically, there are two sales and advertising strategy options to increase revenue. The question is, which one results in more revenue? So pretty straightforward. We're going to calculate revenue for option A first, then option B. Before I even crunch the numbers, I'm going to write out the equation in words. And before I even write the equation out in words, I'm going to go through each of the assumptions with the interviewer, one, to make sure that it makes sense to me so I don't do the math wrong. But also, if any of the assumptions are questionable, I can earn some brownie points with the interviewer by explaining why this might not be realistic in the real world. So right away, there's 25% of customers participating in the rewards program. Nothing funny there. But the fact that there's 10 million customers that's supposed to remain flat is a little surprising. This is both for the rewards program and the intermittent sales. I would think that with either one of these programs, there would actually be an uplift in customers because there's a sales component being added, and neither represents this fact. And when I actually do the math later, in the real world, I'd want to figure out what the uplift in the customer base is from each option. The next interesting thing is that the average pre-sale spend per person is $100 per year. And it appears that this is the same pre-sale spend both for the customers using the rewards program as well as those that aren't. And I would think in the real world that the customers that enroll in this rewards program that end up paying this $50 activation fee are likely to be spending more money in the first place. And if that's the case, it's going to kind of throw all this math off. But for this practice case, we're going to be told to not assume that and just assume simply it's $100 per person regardless. And the fact that customers receive a 20% off discount, nothing surprising there. However, I will emphasize that 20% is a sizable discount, and while this case is focused on declining revenue, I would make a point that there is obviously an effect on profitability that might make the answer to this question about revenue make us want to give a caveat and say one might result in more revenue, but potentially one would have lower profit margins as a result. All right, so with all that said, let's actually get into the math. And we're going to first write the formula in words before writing it out in numbers. So here I'm going to show you my answer sheet. And this is one way to go about answering the case. You might have a different word formula, but as long as you arrive at the same numerical answer, you'll be good to go. So what I have here is I'm summing the total revenue as the revenue for those that enroll in the loyalty program plus the revenues for those that don't enroll in the loyalty program. And I'll bring this a little closer. So first, let's break down the reward user revenue, which is basically your quantity times price, your basic revenue formula. For quantity, that's really the number of customers that are enrolled, which is going to be your percentage of customers enrolled times your overall customer base. And then the price is a combination of that fixed activation fee plus your after-sale spend. So that's your price times quantity or quantity times price. Now we'll go over to the revenue for the non-reward users, and that is the rest of your customers, so those that don't enroll in that loyalty program, multiplied by their post-sale spend, which is going to remain at $100. So once I write that down in words, I'm going to pause. And I'm also going to show that sheet in real time to the interviewer for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I want the interviewer to follow my logic because I need them to understand that I'm not just some math calculator that's going to get the right answer. I need to show them that I have a reason for following each step that I do. And in the real world, this is very important because your clients aren't going to want you to just go home, become a calculator, and then the next day report your findings. They're going to want to understand the methodology behind your calculations. That way, they can be in agreement with your findings. And ultimately, they're the ones whose jobs are on the line from your findings. So it's really important you walk through the math to them. The other reason for the case interview why this is important is because in case you actually end up getting the numbers wrong later on, this allows you to kind of hit save midway through so that if you get the numbers wrong later, you can always come back to the words earlier in the case and then adjust the numbers from there. So this allows you to, even if you get the case math wrong later on, to kind of prevent yourself from fully failing it because it allows you like a break point to go back to. All right, so now with all that said, we'll go back to the numbers. And now I threw all the numbers in. So you have 10 million reward customers, split in that 25% and 75%. That activation fee is $50. Your after sale spend, so this is basically that $100 of pre-sale spend times that 20% off. So that's 80%. And then again, the non-reward users revenue, that's that 75% of 10 million customers. And then multiplying that by the pre-sale spend, which is the same as post-sale, so $100. You do all the math from there. What you end up with is reward users revenue equals 325 million. And then your non-reward user revenue is 750 million. So that's a total revenue for option A of $1.075 billion or $1.075 billion. You can make a couple points here. One point really is, although only 25% of customers are enrolling in that rewards program, they're providing an outsized amount of that revenue. They're providing about 30% of the overall revenue. So they're doing pretty well. Of course, I would say that while they are providing disproportionately more revenue, they are likely to be lower margin overall if they're getting this massive 20% discount, or maybe they're not because they're getting this $50 activation fee. Next, we'll go into option B because this $1.075 billion means nothing unless we have something to compare it to. So for option B, we'll do the same things before. We'll first look at the assumptions. Same 10 million flat customers, and I already made the point about there being a potential customer uplift. Next is this average pre-sale spend is $100. Nothing there that I want to comment on. 20% discount, 3 months per year. So what's going to be interesting here is I would imagine that if you're giving a discount 3 months of the year, there might be a cannibalization effect on the sales at other times during the year. And that's kind of the point being made with the assumption down here, which is, sure, you're going to double your sales, double your revenue during 3 months of the year. But in reality, I would expect that this would decrease revenue during the other 9 months of the year as people, put their spend during the sales period. Or you could argue that that really isn't the case. You could say a rising tide rises all boats and say that this sales period will actually increase revenue during the non-sales period. Because as you get more customers that are attracted to the brand, they'll actually spend more during the non-sales 9 months as well. So either way, I like to point that out because it shows that I'm thinking outside the box and I'm not just confining my thinking to the numbers here. So as before, we're going to now throw these words into a formula before doing the numbers. So here I have option B where I have total revenue equals a non-sale revenue. So that revenue during those 9 months where there's no sale, plus the sale revenue during those 3 months. The non-sale revenue formula is simple. It's the percentage of the year that there's no sale, so those 9 months out of 12, multiplied by what the total pre-sale spend is. So just to make that clear, what I mean by that is there are 10 million customers that are spending a total of $100 before the sale. So the non-sale revenue for those 9 months of the year, it's going to remain the exact same as before, again, just during that 9-month period. For the sale revenue period, we're looking at the percentage of the year where there is a sale, So there's 3 out of 12 months. And then what we're going to do is we'll take that same pre-sale spend, so that same 10 million times $100, but now we're going to double it. So I have this sales increase, that third component, which is written as 2x, but we have to then caveat that with a discount effect, and we're going to only be able to keep 80% of that revenue, or 1 minus 20%. So now with all those words there, again, I would pause, I would confirm with the interviewer if this approach makes sense. Hopefully yes, and if not, I go back to the words. Then I bring the numbers again, throw the numbers in here, and once you compute everything, the non-sale period revenue is $750 million, and then the sale revenue for those 3 months is $400 million, for a total of $1.15 billion, or $1,150 million. And here, just as before, you can see that the sale revenue makes up about a third of the overall revenue. So even though the intermittent sales period is only 25% of the year, it's providing about 1/3 of the overall year's revenue. Of course, that makes sense because the assumption is we're doubling the revenue for that 3-month period. So which one would result in more revenue this year? Well, obviously the answer is option B, because $1.15 billion is larger than $1.075 billion. And then I would say that 1.15 is, of course, $75 million larger than 1.075 billion. So option B provides $75 million more in annual revenue, more in the first year's revenue than option A. So theoretically, we go with option B. Now, in the answer sheet down here, they actually have, for a good answer, that it's projected to generate $50 million more. If my math's correct, it should be $75 million more. But nonetheless, the answer is still the same for option B. Now, I wouldn't just stop there. Of course, in the case here, they're going to ask, what are your recommended next steps? I would actually want to preemptively answer that question right after I give this sub-answer of option B, providing more revenue. And you always want to try to kind of preempt the interviewer and answer the next question they're going to ask before they even ask it. It'll really earn you a lot of brownie points and make you stand out. So I try to kind of mini synthesize the case from here. And what I have written down below all the math here is like my recommendation, which is option B. And I basically make a point like this. I would say option B is what I recommend for the case. I recommend that Fashion Co. employs a strategy of intermittent sales in order to fix their declining revenue problem. And I would do this for 2 reasons. One, as shown, option B will increase revenue it will reach a revenue of $1.15 billion, or $75 million more than the rewards program. And also, I expect that option B will lead to an increase in the customer base. While we're assuming here that there's only going to be 10 million customers, the same as before, I expect that if we employ intermittent sales, we will attract more customers. So this will really help to increase the customer base, not only this year, but in future years. So that's why I would choose option B, this intermittent sales program, to fix Fashion Co.'s declining revenue problem. But then I would give a caveat, which is there's a major risk of the intermittent sales program, which is cannibalization. And that is, as customers start spending more during the 3 months of sales, they might be spending less during the other 9 months of the year. And of course, if they're spending during the 3 months of sales, we're selling this merchandise at a much lower profit margin. And while this might lead to a revenue increase overall, it's going to probably lead to a lower profitability. And that might be concerning for a Fashion Co. So I would leave it at that. And I'd want to mention all these like sub points because it really shows the interviewer I'm not just answering the immediate questions, but I'm thinking beyond the immediate ramifications of the case here. So that's my overall answer for the case. I recommend, if you didn't understand any steps of the math, leave a comment here. I'm happy to answer them and really review each of the subcomponents of the formula that I have here, both the words and numbers, to make sure that it makes sense to you. If you found this video helpful, please like this video and comment on it, and also subscribe to my channel. And if you would like more detailed help, then you can schedule a one-on-one mock case with me on my website, thecasewhisperer.com. See you next time.